Thank you for tuning in. We begin this morning with the Canadian government's latest moves concerning the Omicron variant of COVID-19. Ottawa is expanding travel restrictions. Tuesday afternoon saw 3 additional countries added to the list of nations subjected to federal travel restrictions, including Malawi, Nigeria and Egypt. Now, that brings the total number of nations to 10. There are also new testing requirements for people travelling to Canada.
All air travelers coming from outside Canada, apart from the United States, will now need to be tested at the airport in which they are landing in Canada, whether they are vaccinated or unvaccinated. They will then need to isolate themselves until they get the result of their test. Obviously, those that come to Canada and are not vaccinated from anywhere in the world need to do a quarantine of 14 days, as it has always been the case, and do a test both on day 1 and on day 8.
And the travel restrictions are creating a lot of confusion for some Canadians.
I have my vaccination, everything okay, but I want to know. I'm safe, or I need to get a third dose before I leave.
I was planning on traveling down south for over the holidays, and I've decided to push it back more in January, see where it goes, and see what happens with the new variant.
As long as we're careful, I'm okay with that.
And let's now bring in CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver, joining us from Ottawa this morning. Good morning, Annie.
Good morning.
So lots of changes where travel rules are concerned now, Annie. We understand for foreign nationals, vaccinated Canadians, unvaccinated Canadians, all of them have some different rules now they have to follow when they come back to the country.
Yeah, there are a lot of new rules, Akshay. So if you guys are confused out there, don't worry. We are too. It just came through last night. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios. We were even mind mapping it in the office last night. So it will get clearer over the coming days. But the big overview is that if you are coming to Canada from any country, you are now going to have to get a PCR test upon arrival. So then there are some slight changes. As you just were mentioning in that graphic, 3 new countries have been added to the banned list. So this is Nigeria, Malawi, and Egypt. So if you're a foreign national coming from those countries or you have transited through those countries, you cannot come to Canada. If you are a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, you are allowed to come back home, obviously. However, starting as of last night, you now can no longer get a PCR test in those countries. So in these 10 listed countries, if you're traveling from there, you no longer can have a valid PCR test pre-departure from those countries. That means you need to make a stopover someplace along your journey to Canada to go and get a PCR test. When that comes back negative, then you can come to the border. Once you arrive at the border, then there are even more changes that come into effect. So if you're coming from those 10 listed countries, you're going to have to get that pre-arrival test in a third country. Then when you land, you're also going to have to get another test, and you have to go into a quarantine facility until your arrival test is negative. If you are currently vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you will then be allowed to leave when you get your negative test, and then you can continue your 14-day isolation at home. If you are unvaccinated and you are coming from one of those 10 listed countries, you will have to spend the 14-day quarantine in a quarantine facility. Now, the government says these are not the same types of hotel quarantines we saw earlier in the year. They say that they're really set up for quarantine. They are a much different scenario. What exactly that means, we're not sure, but they do say that, this is measures that are being taken to try to prevent the spread, to try to slow it down, to give health officials in Canada and government officials time to understand exactly what they're dealing with.
So lots to digest there, like you pointed out, Annie. But a question here that we heard from Omar Alghabra, the minister, yesterday, saying some of these rules and regulations will take a few days to take effect.
Exactly. There's a lot that has to go into place. For example, you have to, first of all, get all the PCR tests, and you have to get staff to the airports to do these arrival tests. And that's difficult. We're hearing a lot about nursing shortages, doctor shortages, staff shortages. So they do have to try to have a few days to ramp this up. But the health minister says that the arrival testing at the airports should be happening sometime in the next few days. And, the public safety minister yesterday was warning that this will cause delays at the border, that CBSA agents will have to take their time and do these tests and help out. And they said this is going to cause a delay. So they're warning people, if you're traveling through airports, you are going to have to get this test if you're coming from an international destination, and it will take time. Now, what's interesting is right now the U.S. is excluded from any of these new travel measures. So if you're coming from New York to Canada, you're excluded. However, that's not going to stay the same forever. There is the potential that it might change. Yesterday, the cabinet ministers were talking about the fact that they're in conversations with their provincial counterparts to see what they could do if they feel like the situation has gotten more dangerous and they do need to implement testing for Americans or anybody coming from the U.S. to Canada. So there is the potential that there could be even an expansion that includes the U.S. And we don't know if that means land borders or more airport testing, but this conversation is happening between the provinces and the federal government.
So for now, Annie, like you pointed out, U.S. is an exception, but there has been a lot of reaction to these new announcements as well. The opposition leaders reacting to it. What did Jagmeet Singh have to say?
I actually didn't get a chance to hear Jagmeet Singh this morning, so I'll come back to you in the next hour. However, there has been a lot of pushback from health officials around the world. The WHO has said that travel bans aren't the way to do it. They said that, it's actually discriminatory and can cause harm to some of these countries. There is a fear among the science community that by, enacting travel bans, especially on southern African countries, that what's going to happen is other small countries or countries in general who find these variants might not want to actually alert the international community because they're fearing repercussions. In South Africa, scientists are warning that because of these travel bans, because of flights not now coming into the country, that they're unable to get some of the supplies that they're needed to help combat the variant to begin with. So Canada has really thrust itself into this discussion about whether travel bans are necessary, whether they do help slow down the variant, or whether they make the situation far worse. And so this is something Canada's going to have to look at. And they have said that a blanket travel ban is not going to work. They said they won't do that. However, they said that this move, a more targeted approach to countries who do seem to have a high positivity rate, especially on arrival in Canada for passengers coming from those countries, will give government officials time to figure out what they're dealing with.
Yeah, a lot is up for discussion indeed. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver in Ottawa. Annie, thanks for this.